Ah, okay.
And then adjust your camera. Or adjust your seat. There we go. Welcome to episode 2. And today we're going to talk about Eleanor of Aquataine. And last time we talked about Clovis. And as we discussed, Clovis is famous for bringing Christianity to Europe, or promoting it, not necessarily bringing it, but as a leader, it was a big deal that he would convert, and then his people joined him, and most of his people joined him. And that's where early Catholicism started in Europe.
Hmm.
And what can you tell us about Eleanor?
Have you ever even heard of Eleanor of Aquitaine?
I have not.
You have not. El-
No, the history I enjoy studying is a little more modern than way back. And so this is interesting for me, and it's great to be learning. So I've devoted my life to it. So I'm happy to learn anything.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to have an
Eleanor,
expert to teach me.
yes, Eleanor of Aquitaine is one of my favorite women in history. And let me tell you why. Well, like you said earlier, we left off with Clovis and how he had united all of the Frankish tribes, all the Germanic tribes, and he converted them all to Christianity. And so now here it is several hundred years later, and now all of these Christians in Europe they're going to go back to the Holy Land. They're going to go back to Jerusalem, and they're going to go fight to get Jerusalem back. We call it the Crusades. That's what everybody knows them as. So, and this is where Eleanor of Aquitaine will come on this stage and onto the world stage about this time period. She's going to come in at about the Second Crusade. But Eleanor of Aquitaine, she was born in 1122. She died in 1204. But she was one of the most powerful and influential figures of the High Middle Ages. She was the mother of 3 Plantagenet kings, Henry the Young King, King Richard the Lionheart, and King John.
Okay, I know Lionheart.
Yeah. Um, John isn't as known for his pleasantries as well as Richard was. But Richard, especially, and King John, they're also known for this was the time period of Robin Hood, when the whole Robin Hood of Sherwood Forest and that
Okay.
whole story and legend grew. This was during that time period. She was educated, her childhood, she was brought up. She was educated by her father, who was William X, and he was also known as the Saint. He was the Count of Poitiers, and he was the Duke of Aquitaine. Now, he made sure, even at a young age, that she was well educated. Philosophy, language, culture, the rigors of court life, all of these things helped build her character into the woman that she was going to have to become one day,
Okay.
and definitely shaped her personality,
Now,
because she
is
had a very powerful personality.
sounds like it. That's what education will do for you. Is Aquitaine in Normandy? Do we know?
Seems like it beside Normandy. I want to France and over
Yeah,
next
so
to
it's the
Spain.
Channel, then Normandy, then Aquitaine.
I'm really not sure on the geography. I know it's France,
Fair enough.
but it sounds like Spain as well, over next to Spain.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. We may have to look that one up.
We'll delete this part.
But she was actually Eleanor of Aquitaine became Duchess in her own right. She became Duchess of Aquitaine as a child.
Because of her
So,
father.
yeah, because of her father. So it wasn't like she married into it or
Mm.
anything like that. She was a duchess in her own right. And she would later become queen consort of England and France, which is where we're going next. She married Louis VII, who was known as King Louis VII of France. And right after they got married, his father got ill and died. So both of them ascended to the throne as king and queen of France. And 1145, Pope Eugene III called for the Second Crusade, and Louis eagerly decided he was going to go. And Eleanor was going to go with him. And she did. This woman went on a crusade and fought with them. And not
We
only
need
did
to
she.
we need to
What?
repeat that. It lagged out over here.
Oh, it lagged out.
Did it not with you?
I can't really tell. I'm just talking away.
Okay. You're also doing all this.
Well, I know I'm rocking. Okay.
Yes,
So
you are.
in 1145, Pope Eugene III called for the Second Crusade. And when he did so, Louis eagerly wanted to go, and he joined.
Okay.
So he went, and he took Eleanor with him.
And this was sort of a way to earn points with the church and therefore earn getting into heaven kind of
I
an
believe.
attitude.
I mean, yeah. If
They,
we're going
Pope,
to save Jerusalem. We're going to take the Holy Land back from the Muslims.
did the Christians ever own the Holy Land?
Jerusalem fell in 70 A.D. to Rome.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm. So now they're coming. Now the Muslim culture has come in and took over Jerusalem. It's been converted to Muslim,
Sure,
and
sure.
now the Crusades are coming back to take back Jerusalem.
I've got you.
And that's what we're all crusading and doing. But it was a terrible crusade. It failed miserably. It was awful. It didn't go well for them at all. So
And that
they
was
had to go back to England.
okay. Yeah. Well, sure.
But Eleanor went back with him. She survived. Eleanor survived this crusade. She went with him. She survived it. So she comes back. And you know what? You're doing your thing. I'm doing my thing. We're not getting along. I don't really like you anymore. I want a divorce. Here it is, the mid-12th century. This woman has not only gone off, fought a crusade, come back and survived it, but now she is asking her husband, the King of France, for a divorce. And she gets it. The church annuls the marriage.
I was going to say they're devout Christians, and that's also something that Christianity frowns upon as annulments.
You know, and as further along down in history, as we'll come to learn, King Henry VIII, he made that whole ordeal famous, you know, divorcing his wife and blah, 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 and how that was a big deal with the church. But people don't realize that Eleanor of Aquitaine was a woman and asked her husband for a divorce in the mid-12th century. This woman is amazing. I love her. Well, she gets the divorce, and she marries Henry II, who was the Duke of Normandy. And after King Stephen of England dies, both of them ascend to the throne as King and Queen of England.
Okay.
And then,
And that had to be unusual to have been Queen of France and then later Queen of England.
that's a lot of power. That's a lot of power and influence. You know, she's got ties all over Western Europe now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that had to do nothing but improve England's standings, especially in foreign relations. She only had to have helped the situation. But it didn't matter because Henry and Eleanor didn't get along, so, which is crazy because they had 8 children together. They had 5 sons and 3 daughters, but they never got along. But
Sounds like a lot of makeup sex.
right, you know. But Henry was notorious for his infidelities and had a lot of illegitimate children, and Eleanor wasn't very happy, and she is rumored to have poisoned his favorite mistress, the fair Lady Rosamond.
Oh my goodness.
He wasn't happy about that, and there was a lot of plots with her sons to overthrow him, King Henry II. Because they didn't get along, she didn't like him. She was always plotting, but that's what she's known for, you know,
Sure.
helping her sons overthrow their father, King Henry II.
Okay.
And so in 1189. Hold on a second. When did he die? When did he die? Yeah. All right. So in 1180, no, I don't know. Where did I leave off at? I keep telling myself you can edit this.
Yeah, no problem. Henry II died in 1189?
Oh, no, hang on. No, I want to back up.
Okay.
Because I just got, he was notorious with his children, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah. So, they had blah, blah, blah. So she was notorious for helping her sons plot, try to overthrow their father, King Henry II. Well, Henry II got wind of this and had Eleanor imprisoned for treason for 16 years. And so for 16 years, she was just shuttled in between castles and strongholds and forts.
Okay. And this is probably more like house arrest than a jail cell?
I would think so, with her being the queen mother.
Right.
Certainly, probably a little bit more conditions than your average your average royal or average noble or even peasant would get. Like, I don't picture in the Tower of London, I'll put it that
Okay.
way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in 1189, Henry II dies. And when he does, his son, King Richard the Lionheart, will ascend the throne. Now, his older brother, Henry the Young King, is already dead. So, with his older brother being dead and his father being dead, that is why Richard is the one to ascend to the throne.
Okay.
And when he does, the first thing that he does, one of his first acts as king, is to free his mother. And he does. And so his mother becomes a big, big influence on military advising, political policies, all of that. And then shortly after she's freed and his reign begins, the Pope calls for a third crusade, and Richard eagerly goes.
Okay.
And as we all know, Richard doesn't survive the third crusade, but he did leave her regent of England while he was gone, which means she was in control of everything over England.
Okay.
Which is a lot of power for a woman, especially during this time period. Because normally we don't have queens that rule, and we will not have a queen to rule until Mary Tudor in 1553. But as queen, she is a queen in her own right. And
We need to do that again.
probably.
Could you hear that over my mic?
I heard something, but I wasn't sure what it was.
Hang on 1 second. Let's give it a minute. I think he's using a drill. Hang on 1 second. It's a drill, and I said they're going to be 2 minutes. What else do you know?
Well, Eleanor survives.
No,
She
no,
survives Richard.
no. Let's not. We don't need to do this
Oh,
unless he's done. We'll give him a minute.
okay.
He's not done. Um, let's practice. Let's practice one or both of the Kickstarter videos.
Okay, yeah,
So we'll set up a camera in the conference room, and we'll have all those books behind us, so we look smart.
okay.
and an actual video camera, and let's talk about your book. So I'm Drew, and this is Carrie.
I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to talk about.
That's why we're practicing.
Ah.
I'm Drew, and this is Carrie, and we have a Kickstarter project we're working on, and we have actually it's 2 Kickstarter projects. The first one, the content is already collected or created, and this is from a trip that Carrie took to Scotland, and here are a few pages of it to give you an idea of what we're talking about. I guess we'll just say book, because we don't know. It sounds like you may want a paper copy of a book. Is that what you have in mind, or do you care?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't care.
Okay. And once you've got the ebook, all you do is send that to a publisher, and then they send you back a case of books. Because that's exactly what a publisher would want. It's just a digital copy. And Lee might have publishing ability.
What do you mean?
They might be willing to print the document.
Ah.
They may have the ability and be willing to do that. And then that would probably be subsidized. It'd be much cheaper than going to Little Brown and Company. They're a famous publisher.
But um, I keep going with this with the whole Kickstarter thing. I'm literally in the dark. I really don't know where to go or what to say or how to do this.
Tell me about Scotland.
About Scotland.
Tell me about what I call the lead up to Scotland, which is you studied your family genealogy and traced yourself back to wherever, and then decided to go see these places that you knew your family owned and lived in hundreds of years ago.
All right. My name is Carrie Blair. I spent
No last names.
Do what?
No last names.
Oh, all right.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, they can track your ass down.
Okay. I'm Carrie, and I spent a majority of 2015 studying my ancestry and genealogy, and in November, I decided to. No, hold on. See.
I want to
See,
know.
I traced my lineage all the way back to Scotland, and I traced it all the way back to 1105 AD. And so in November of 2015, I decided to go back to my motherland. And I decided to go back home to original. I went to Blair, Scotland, back to Blair House. And
there's an actual town named Blair.
Yeah, it's an area. It's
it's an area. More like a county that we would call in the U.S.
Yeah, well, it's like Cumnock now. Like it's the original. Yeah, it's like I have a map that I found from 1245, and that our whole area, it's just Blair.
Oh, so that might be
I don't know if it's a county or it's just if a town or a village. It's just it's Blair, Scotland.
And it might have been the original estate or something. It sounds like
it was that house.
By the time your family has a castle, they've probably got lands surrounding it.
The first Peel Tower was built in 1105, and I am of Norse descent. So I'm a Viking originally, but all the way back to Scotland. And it was the greatest adventure of my life, really. I saw, the highlands, the lowlands. I saw museums and concerts and orchestras and I galloped Clydesdales on the back of, on Prince Charles' estate. I don't know. I saw a lot of. It was the greatest adventure of my life. I drove a car on the wrong side of the road, on the wrong side of the car for the first time, and about died, but I survived. I rode a train for the first time. I rode a double-decker bus for the first time. It was my first time overseas. I'd never been out of the country before. It was my first overseas flight, my first time in a foreign country, and the greatest adventure of my life.
That's all we need. But for Kickstarter, this footage doesn't work, so we'll do it over in this back room. And it looks like they're done. Can you remember where we left off? Henry II is dead. Richard the Lionheart.
He becomes king. All right, so in 1189, Henry II dies and Richard is in hand. He ascends to the throne. Now, because his older brother, King Henry the Young King, is already dead and his father's dead, this is why Richard ascends to the throne. Now, right after he becomes king, his first act as king is to free his mother, who's been in prison for the last 16 years because she's been helping her son trying to overthrow her husband, who is now dead. So he does that. And then the Pope calls for a third crusade, and Richard eagerly goes, leaving Eleanor as regent of England, which means she was in charge of everything of England. But as we all know, Richard dies because he does not survive that crusade. And King John ascends to the throne. And Eleanor lives long into even John's reign. John was not a very good king, but he left England impoverished. He was forced to sign the Magna Carta in 1215.
That's interesting economically because that's the middle class rising to power
Mhm.
and basically starting to take everything over. The merchant class would have probably been called back then.
You know, and I can't really blame John. He really was left in a bankrupt state when he ascended to the throne. Unfortunately, while Richard was over, fighting his crusades, he got kidnapped a lot. And they held him for ransom, and Eleanor paid all of the ransoms. So between the crusades and all the ransoms that she paid, she left England bankrupt.
Okay.
So it didn't help that when John come to the throne, that England was already bankrupt from that. So with all the taxes on everything that were just outright ridiculous, it just led to the uprising and the signing of
Sure.
the Magna Carta.
Go ahead.
Okay. She
Thank you.
promoted courtly culture, the troubadour songs, or the troubadour, I believe that's how it's
Troubadour.
pronounced. Troubadour.
Troubadour.
They were the love songs and poets of the medieval times, all about romance. She matters of states, all the courtly affairs, like she livened court up. She made it a more happier place, but when you're living in medieval times.
Ugh.
But she died in 1204 at the age of 82, which is unheard of for this time period. That is so old. That is amazing.
That's
But
not even near our average lifespan now.
I know it's insane. She lived forever. But she died in a nunnery in let's see, Fontreval in Anjou,
Okay.
and she died one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful and influential woman in Europe, especially in the High Middle Ages.
That's it.
And
Well,
that is why Eleanor of Aquitaine is amazing.
excellent. All right, we can stop recording.
Do I push stop broadcast?
Yeah,
Okay.
unless you already have.